through history of the vaccinations, how they protect the body, and why as educators it's so important for you to be clear about this, right? What are you going to take back to your students? What can you yourself learn as parents? And then finally, we're going to do something fun. Instead of me just sitting here for an hour preaching to you about this, I'm going to let you simulate, okay? And then we'll have closing remarks and questions and answers. So a little bit about myself. As mentioned earlier, my name is Mary Blake. I'm from Denton, Texas, and I work as a microbiologist at Pseudocal Laboratories. What we do there is we test the bacteria, yeast, and mold in miscellaneous products. So we test products like deodorant, toothpaste, shampoo. All of these things you don't think about could be contaminated with E. coli. You don't think about could be contaminated with staph or salmonella or mold, but they could be. And so what we do is we test the products, and if they're within appropriate range, we send them a certificate of completion, and they're free to ship off to places like Walmart, Walgreens, and Kroger's. However, if they are growing bacteria or some type of mold, then we fail the product. And we'll tell Neutrogena or we'll tell press that there was too much contamination, and they're going to have to sanitize that product and send another batch. And also I work PRN at Baylor Hospital as a medical lab technician, and basically we'll get samples. We'll get urine, we'll get blood, we'll get stool, we'll get everything you can think of, and we'll just run the tests that the doctors have ordered, and then we'll upload it into the system so they can share with patients. I recently completed a master's at Tufts University in Boston, and before that I graduated with my bachelor's from University of Texas at Arlington. And I'm interested in this event because as teachers, as educators, wherever you're coming from, you have such an influence in students' lives. Whether you realize it or not, whether they are paying attention to you or ignoring you, teachers have such a huge influence in their students' lives. And students remember that and they take that on. And even as parents as well. So we're just going to dive right in. So a little bit of the histories of vaccines or shots. In 1721, Edward Jenner, he developed a vaccine for the smallpox. And if you don't know a whole lot about smallpox, it's this terrible disease that just debilitating, just covers the body in blisters. And also, if you didn't know, it blisters the inside of the body. So the organs as well, and a lot of people would die because it was actually their organs that were infected with this virus. And even the ones who survived, they are just covered with scars. Very unfortunate. And what he happened to see, there's a cow in this, because back then they had milkmaids, and those were women who would actually milk cows, and they also were fresh. He was seeing that the milkmaids were coming down with this similar type of illness, but they weren't getting nearly as sick, and they weren't staying sick as bad. And he just had the idea, if they are getting this type of similar disease, but not as bad, but then they're not dying when they're around people that are smallpox, maybe there's something there. So he took a small piece of like a pustule, but he took a small piece of that, and he actually inoculated a little boy who had been, we call it naive, but it basically means that they've never been exposed to any type of sickness. Inoculated a little boy that was naive to the disease, and then he exposed this child to someone with smallpox, and that child did not get smallpox. So he effectively created the first vaccine. Fast forward about 100 years, and we have Mr. Louis Pasteur. And if you're familiar with pasteurization, if you drink wine or have a glass of milk even, it's the method of heating and cooling that keeps it free from contamination. It keeps it bacteria-free. And he also invented vaccinations for anthrax and rabies. And, very importantly, the MMR vaccine, which we still use today, was still really important. And then we'll jump way forward to the 1950s. So this is where clinical trials were started. And two events really are what pushed this forward. So the first was the Nazi war crimes. And if you know a little bit about what some of the Nazi scientists were doing. They were doing human experimentation. And this is where they actually subjected people to high levels of radiation poisoning, to toxic gases, to body mutilations, pain poisoning. And they were studying this, and they found some great information that we still use today as far as pain tolerance, as far as how the body reacts to certain poisons, was completely unethical. These people were suffering and dying. And the other event that really pushed forward clinical trials was the Tuskegee syphilis experiments. And if you're not familiar with that, it was an experiment where there was a poor group of mainly African American males, and they were subjected to the syphilis. And syphilis is a sexually transmitted disease, but it's normally cured through penicillin. And rather than giving them penicillin and curing them the disease, they allowed these group of men to persist with the syphilis, and they monitored the symptoms. And again, that's completely unethical. These guys were suffering and dying, and it was really bad. So luckily, there were a group of people that said, these things are not good. And there has to be some sort of regulation. There has to be some type of policy that is monitoring these scientists and these doctors. Who are they being accountable to? So that's where we developed clinical trials. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And finally, in 1979, I have a picture of the World Health Organization, and they officially declared smallpox eradicated. And for a disease to be declared completely eradicated is a phenomenal thing. There are not many diseases that we can say are eradicated, but as of now, smallpox is one of those. And if you want to see how long that took, 1721, Edward Jenner developed the first vaccine for it, and it wasn't until 1979 until they're saying that it's finally no more. So that just gives you an idea of just the variations, things that can go wrong, even when you do have vaccinations, and how long it takes. Okay, so research and development. We'll go a little bit further into clinical trials because they are so important when you have vaccinations. Clinical trials now are broken up into three main phases. The first phase are animal studies, and I'm the biggest animal lover. I'm sure all you guys have dogs, cats, rabbits, birds. However, it's still seen more ethical to test on animals before testing on people. So in phase one, they're mainly looking at how a living body reacts to this type of medicine in general. They're looking to see toxicity. So they'll normally end up sacrificing the animal. They'll look at the organs, and they'll see, was there kidney toxicity? Was there liver toxicity? Was there brain toxicity? Because all of these things are important to know before you go on into a human trial. So they'll look at that, and they'll also look at the form of the medication. They'll look and see, well, maybe pill form is not very effective. Maybe the liver's not breaking it down. So let's try it in a nasal inhaler. Let's try it in a liquid. And they'll typically do that. Once that progresses, it'll go on to phase two. Phase two studies, they will use human, and they are looking for safety and efficacy. They're looking to make sure that it's safe for humans, because humans still are different than animals. So before the FDA approves it and it's available to the general public, you still have to test on humans. So a lot of times they will ask people who are already patients in a hospital. And sometimes they're in a clinical trial. Sometimes they have a terminal disease like cancer or the HIV, and they will approach these people to say, we have this new drug. Do you want to try it? It may or may not be effective. But they'll use a smaller population, and then it'll go on to phase three. Phase three, and to give you an idea, out of 100 clinical trials, meaning 100 drugs, you have maybe about 5 of them that would go on to phase three. Because any little thing that is a concern for the well-being of people, they will just knock it off. And they'll say, start over. Do more research on this. So they make them start over. So it takes about 10 years, 10 to 15 years, for a vaccine to be approved. So the ones that we have today, they started on those in 2001, now they're being effective. So there are different types of vaccines. There's live attenuated, and that's actually a small piece of the living antigen. And they put that inside of the shot itself, and then they'll dose that to you. And these are probably going to be the ones that are a little bit less toxicity, but it gives a better immune response with a live vaccine. Another type is inactivated or killed. This is where they'll take an original pathogen and they'll kill it, normally by heating it. And then they'll dose that into the body, and your body can still mount a immune response. And then the other part is subjugate or conjugate vaccines, and those are from not so much the antigen itself, but the toxins that the antigen puts off. If you know, sometimes bacteria, they'll release certain things. They'll release things, neurotoxins, or they'll release some type of toxoid. It's the toxoid itself instead of the bacteria itself. And all the time, the FDA and the CDC are constantly monitoring adverse events, symptoms. They're monitoring any changes that are happening to the general population. So there's going to be a lot of changes that are going to be happening with the flu vaccine, because I think we've all heard this year it's been pretty bad. And with that, in particular, the influenza virus, it changes so quickly that sometimes the vaccine comes out and it's not even that strain. So vaccines are typically made 6 to 8 months before they're needed, because it takes that long to make as many for the population. So by the time they come out with the vaccines and needed, it's morphed into a whole different other strain. So that's probably one of the issues that's been happening with the flu vaccine. And then finally, just a disclaimer, when people are pregnant, people with terminal disease, they do still ask if they have allergies, that you still consult with a pediatrician or you consult your doctor before taking a vaccine that you're not comfortable with. You always want to do your underlying research and be comfortable with something before you do it. Next, so anyone here military or know someone who served in any type of armed forces? Yes? Well, first I'd like to thank you or thank them for their service. And also, this is labeled Protect and Serve, because the immune system, our immune system, essentially does have four parts. We have two main lines of immunity. The first is innate, and the innate line of immunity is the first line of defense. It's the line of defense that's going to include your skin, it's going to include your mucous membranes, it's going to include your tears, your saliva. And if you didn't know, your tears, saliva, and your skin is actually acidic and has little things in it that kill pathogens. And it's the first line of defense, and all living things have this innate immunity. When you get sick, that's the first thing that will try and eliminate the disease, the pathogen. The second line of defense is adaptive immunity. Adaptive immunity takes longer to respond because it is adaptive. And what it does is it specifically creates a mechanism against every different type of pathogen that you're exposed to. So, in adaptive immunity, after the innate system is failed, so say for the flu, right? And you've inhaled someone's cough, and it's infected with the influenza virus. And there's so much of that flu viral particles inside that your innate system fails. It just says, I can't do this. So what happens is you have these cells, and they're called antigen-presenting cells. And it takes a little piece of the antigen, and it takes it to your T cell. And your T cell will take that and activate your B cells to differentiate into what are called plasma cells. These plasma cells secrete antibodies. And that is what essentially fights off the flu vaccine or bacterial infection or whatever pathogen that you're coming across with. But it takes longer because it formulates every type of antibody specific for every type of pathogen. So you have antibodies for influenza type A. You have antibodies for influenza type B. You have antibodies for specifically adenovirus. You have antibodies for specifically whipworms, everything. And it changes. So every time you're exposed to something new, it makes new antibodies. For that reason, that's why sometimes when you get the flu or you get anything, you still have symptoms. Because it takes time for these antibodies to make. It takes about, I think, between 10 and 20 days. So in that time, you feel sick, and you're like, I got this vaccine, but it's not working. I got this vaccine, but I'm still coughing, I'm still having a fever, I'm still nauseous. It's not working. So why am I taking it? Your body needs a time to develop an antibody specific for that particular antigen. And the diagram here is called lock and key binding mechanism, and it's essentially showing you what that is. So, so the green little Y, upside down Y-shaped structure, that's your antibody. And those little tips that look like bits have been bitten out, that's the part that changes. So it's like a key. And it's called lock and key because essentially how keys have the grooves, it changes those grooves when you're infected by something new. It changes those grooves and it will connect to the pathogen with this little red ball thing. So that's kind of what happens, and that's why it takes a while to make antibodies. And then just continuing it, we've already covered most of it, but just talking about the symptoms. So again, whenever you're feeling sick, whenever you're feeling the symptoms like headache, nausea, diarrhea, etc., it's not necessarily because whatever vaccination you did, it didn't work. It's just your body has to have some type of reaction to your vaccines to develop an immune response. The vaccines hurt a little bit when you get it, right? It's a needle, so it hurts, right? It swells up? Yes. So the things that they put in vaccines actually cause it to swell because sometimes such small viral particles can go in and your body won't even detect it. So if you can't detect it, it doesn't know it's there. If someone breaks into your house and you're not home, how are you going to call the police, right? You can't. Or maybe neighbors can. But the point is, the body has to have some type of immune response in order to make these antibodies in the first place. In order for the B cells and the T cells to come and say, hey, there's something in here that's weird, that's not you, that's attacking you. There has to be that needle, that inflammation, and then what that attracts the cells. So this is just saying the different symptoms. You get a fever, or you get a headache, or diarrhea. Each one has a specific immune response, and that's your immunity. And then also, once you get vaccines, once those antibodies are made, it remembers. So say you got influenza type A. If you are exposed to that again, you already have those antibodies in your system. Once they are made, you always have them. And that's why it's important for vaccines. Sometimes you do need to get booster shots, but once a vaccine is injected and you make those antibodies, your body always remembers it. So you essentially will never get sick from influenza type A again. But unfortunately, there's like 100 different types, so then something goes up. Okay, so as educators, as teachers, as parents, why do you care? Why does it matter? So there are a lot of things in vaccines that might seem weird or scary. They're called excipients or derivatives or ingredients, however you want to think about them. But when the greater part of the population decides not to vaccine, sometimes they do get outbreaks. There was an outbreak in Disney World a year or so ago for measles. This picture here is a young girl, and she got the measles. And we have the vaccine for that. And there's no reason that she should have gotten that. But there is a lot of skepticism. There is a lot of scary things out there. And if you're not asking questions, if you don't understand how the process works, then yeah, as a parent or an educator or whatever, you think that it's better to forego that. And that's understandable. But the downside is that sometimes these young children, these babies, do get hurt. And that's what we're trying to prevent. That's the big picture here. We don't want this. We don't want this to happen. You know, this other little boy here, he was infected with polio. And he did not receive the polio vaccine. And kind of what polio does is it debilitates you in this way. And so it's very unfortunate, but this is the worst case scenario. This is essentially what we're advocating against, so we don't have to see people like this. And so, who are some of these? I just wanted to touch on the anti-vaxxers. And whatever your stance, as long as you're getting educated on that and educating others, is your choice. But just wanted to touch on some people who don't agree with vaccinations. Typically, anti-vaxxers, a lot of them, they have a preconceived notion that vaccines cause Down syndrome, autism, or several other diseases. There has been a lot of research against that, but I always just try and tell people, ask experts in that field. Don't just Google it. Don't just read blogs. Ask someone who works with vaccines. Ask someone who makes medication what's going on. And then get comfortable with it. And then if you still decide that the answer is no for you, then that's your answer. But it's just important to educate yourself and educate those around you who don't know, who think that they can read a blog and the blog is going to give them all the information that they need. Tell them to seek out a little bit more. So really that's just about it. It goes into a little more depth of who exactly are the anti-vaxxers. And it just says wealthier on average, with annual incomes that are higher type people, non-Hispanic, white, married couples that are predominantly in English-speaking households, educated with college degrees, and covered with private health care insurance. So that's just different polls that we'll look at to find out who these people are. Because you read a lot on the internet, don't do this, don't do this. You want to know who's saying this, who are these people, what kind of following do they have. So they do actually keep track of that. They keep track of the people who are agreeing, and they also keep track of people who are not agreeing with it. All right, so we are going to get into something fun, right? So we have an activity here, and I'm going to let you make your own mouth vaccinations. I have a little table set up. It's kind of chaotic, but it's really just a way to make you feel more comfortable. And I actually brought my papers. Is it a black folder? Is this? Yeah, inside. Inside. Yes, those. Yes. Thank you. This one. Okay. So I'm going to divide everyone up into groups. Pass it down. I'm going to divide them into groups because I know y'all probably do a lot of group exercises anyway. And yeah, we're going to glove up, gown up, and we're going to make some of our own vaccines. How does that sound? Good? Good. It should, but you know we're going to squash it. Okay. So let me get my groups. How many people do we have? Let's just do a group C. So how many do you want to picture? That's the easiest. So you guys are going to be group A. You guys are going to be group B. And y'all are going to be group C.
You want me to pass out the green? Oh, here, I'm sorry. The bowl here. You want me to pass out the green?
Okay, if everyone wants to line up or get in your groups, everyone needs a pair of gloves. Everyone needs a gown.
Do you want us just to use that one?
Yeah, that's fine.
They're
This
different
is a
sizes.
small.
This is a large, so whichever.
And then
Green gowns or just a blue gowns?
okay. So Someone says not like here.
Again tomorrow. Don't you need to say something?
Okay, so the instructions are, you're gonna line up over here.
No, the paper.
Did I group C?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, it should be right here, sorry for that.
I have that one.
Oh, the other,
Yeah,
some
that
more? Here you go. So the paper you have with the paper clip, that is a paper of vaccine excipients or ingredients. What vaccine excipients are essentially what's inside of it, right? A lot of them may have ominous names, they may sound scary, but it's just a list of things that are inside vaccines and what they are. So, in Group A, you have your ingredients, and what you're going to do, you're going to come over here. Hello. We're just in time for our activity. You can get in Group C. So you're going to come over here.
And there's your gloves. You can get your gloves. What do you need?
You're going to grab a tube. Right?
Do they need to put the gowns on first?
And on the table are ingredients. Group A has a list, Group B has a list, and Group C has a list. You get your tube, and you can use Q-tips, you can use a little scoop, I have loops too, but you're going to put approximately 1 meal, use your best estimate, it's not very much, of each ingredient in the tube. Then I want you to shake it up, and then we have some syringes, and then those will be your vaccines, right? So, get
Do they need
started.
to put the gowns on?
Yes. Okay, so you need to have down, because you have to have proper protection, right? If you're making vaccinations, you can't just jump in there. You need to have your proper protection.
Mary, can you make sure this is still on and rolling and recording?
That's it.
Yes.
I need a water.
You want me to go get water real quickly?
Yeah, right in the hallway.
One or both?
Because I'll simulate. Now. Great. Is that what yours? And then here, I'll get gloves too. Somewhere back here. You need. Okay, so Group A for you guys. All right, so
So do we start with just you go on just in that order? Do you
and
start
then
with
what's the first?
Aluminum hydroxide.
Aluminum hydroxide. So you're going to find aluminum hydroxide.
that first one? You want to line those stuff up?
Yeah, I actually came in early, but they didn't well, they were late, and so I was like scrambling. So it's kind of, yeah, that's fine.
I'm mother, by the way.
Oh, where is it?
Gloves.
So you're gonna put a little. Bit here. What's our next ingredient? E. coli. All right. So you just take a cotton swab full, like so. What's our next ingredient? Histidine. This was a foam. It was a foam, but it's just collected at the bottom. And then for any liquids, we have pipettes here. I'm just going to take a little bit like that. Put it into.
Not doing anything original, huh?
No, I originally did print off some stuff for how much, but it was just too complicated.
Okay.
It was like
complicated.
1
Yeah,
ml
yeah.
of histidine, 14 milliliters of this, and I was just like, just give them the general idea of what you're talking about. What's the next?
Sucrose.
Sucrose. Okay, so then we're gonna find sucrose. Here.
And why sucrose be in?
So we're making a vaccine, essentially. And that's one of the derivatives inside the vaccine. And then, what's the
We're
last
trying to
one?
figure out how to pronounce it.
Oh.
Deoxycholate.
Deoxycholate?
Cholate.
Good, good. You were close.
I know chocolate. We're hungry, so you like chocolate.
Chocolate?
Okay.
Yeah. My cholesterol will be very high. My sugar will be high with that.
Let's do that.
So we're going to take a little bit like this.
And what is that?
This is
Deoxycholate.
deoxycholate. And what it really is called tween 80. And we actually use this in our experiments. This is a surfactant called tween 80. And we actually do use this in some of the experiments. It's completely harmless. It's essentially like oil. Yeah. Everything has a
Kanamycin?
Kanamycin?
No.
Do that. And then the only thing that I did ask everyone to add is you're going to want to put approximately 4 to 5 milliliters of H2O, and that's to give your vaccine its liquid property, right?
Get another pipe. Yeah.
Oh, we're limited, so yeah. So that's very good. So just so I have enough for everyone, use 1 or 2 pipettes. But correct, PPE, when you are making something, yes, very good. You are wanting to change out the materials, especially for plastic. You can kind of just throw them away. And if they're metal, you'll want to autoclave them or sterilize them. So we're going to put about that much in there. That's like a whole pipette full. If you want to do a little bit more, that's fine. As long as it's at least halfway full. This. Screw it on. Put it on tight and give it a shake. Because you want all of your ingredients to be mixed, right? You want everything to be homogeneous.
At the lab, what do you use to mix all this ingredient?
We have what's called a centrifuge, and we also have a vortex, and it's essentially it shakes it without us having to shake it, because we have so many tubes. I'm gonna put them on. We have so many tubes or so much stuff.